Howdy, my name is Nonat, and I'm back to do something that I said I would do a long time ago that you guys really enjoyed, and I said, yeah, I'll do it, and then didn't. That's kind of every part of my channel. Seriously, I do like a different series every week, and I'm like, let's do another one! And then it's like 4 months until I do it. How long was it for this last one? How long since the Fighter Dual Class Guide? Tier list? That long? Wow, I can't believe it's that long. Can you believe it's been that long? It's the Rogue Dual Class Tier Guide. Let's go. Why do I keep saying what is a tier guide? Tier list! This is an informal video. I'm on vacation right now. Let's go. If you haven't seen my Fighter Dual Class tier list, this is me judging the outright power of a class combination when used in the dual class variant for Pathfinder 2e. TLDR, when you're a dual class, you get the best parts of both class. If one has master in heavy armor and the other has master in arcane spell attack rolls, you're master in both. It's great. Now the Rogue is interesting because the Rogue does not get a whole lot when it comes to combat expertise. They get the most skills in the game, and of course they get sneak attack, but beyond that, they don't provide that much, which usually is going to put them in a meh ranking for other classes, except for Fighter, which I think they got either A or S tier because of crit sneak attacks, but we're going to talk about it, we're going to look at the Rogue, and think about how it benefits or suffers from being combined with another class. It's never really going to suffer because it's just more power, but it could be less more power. Starting off, you would really think that the Alchemist and a Rogue would be a match made in heaven, but I think I have to disagree. After looking through the classes, they don't really complement each other that well. In fact, nothing that one can do really helps the other. This is because the Rogue's entire build is centered around sneak attack. Sure, they can get a ton of skill proficiencies, especially with crafting and whatnot from the Alchemist, but it's nothing that the Rogue can't do by itself, and alchemical bombs are not agile or finesse weapons, and unfortunately they're not a ranged weapon either. They are a thrown weapon, and as it states in the Rogue sneak attack feature, if a thrown weapon needs to get sneak attack, it also needs to be agile or finesse. So sure, they can make some cool items, they could give themselves Quicksilver or Silver-tongued mutagens and heals and stuff, and just bombs is a cool extra option, but they're not going to be any better with bombs than a normal Alchemist, and they're not going to be better at sneak attacks than a normal Rogue. Unfortunately, the Alchemist Rogue goes in D tier. Also, I should state, I say this in the first video, but I'll state it again, I'm not looking at every spell on a spell list and every feat in a class when I'm thinking of these. When I'm doing my dual class comparison tier list like this, I'm thinking of face value. What are you getting from this dual class? So a lot of people defended like the War Priest on the Fighter build because they get this spell and that spell and these proficiencies, but overall, again, face value, first impressions, how strong are these guys? Now, Barbarian is fun, and I am on the line between S tier and A tier, mainly because you get both sneak attack and rage damage, but I think what's going to leave it in A tier is the fact that the very traits that allow you to trigger sneak attack are the same traits that reduce rage damage by half. If you are using an agile or finesse weapon as a barbarian, your rage damage is cut in half. Now, after double checking it, rage is only reduced on agile weapons, not on finesse. So technically, a rapier-wielding barbarian rogue will deal full rage damage and sneak attack damage, which is a ton, but I think limiting it to basically 1, maybe 2 or 3 weapons in the entire system to make it work is also going to be considered a detriment and keep it an A tier, not S tier. But still, imagine wielding a rapier, somehow getting a critical hit on a flat-footed target at level 1 and dealing 1d6 plus whatever rage damage plus 2d8 from it's so much damage. This much possible damage. The Bard is the first in a list of classes that are all going right in B tier. The Bard is a spellcaster. When you look at a spellcaster, when attached to a martial class, it's mostly, okay, what if this class could cast spells? The end. Obviously, some spell lists are better than others, But overall, the class itself doesn't give all that much. I suppose you can inspire courage on yourself, which is cool, and a rogue that is in the middle of combat inspiring courage will be helpful, as if the fighter and barbarian are on the front lines and the normal bard will be hanging back, the rogue might be up there doing their thing and buffing them without falling out of range. But most of the time you're going to be in range anyway, and also playing music doesn't lend itself to sneaking, so Bard is going to be low B tier. I'll get back to Champion in a second, let's just knock all these out of the way. Cleric is slightly above Bard, but is still in B tier, just for a better spell list. The Divine Spell list has some of the most powerful buffs in the game, and so being able to buff yourself with things like heroism is great. There's not a whole lot beyond that. The Divine Spell list is insanely powerful when it comes to buffing. It's just not insanely powerful when it comes to offensive spells, but as a martial class, as half of your dual class, you can just attack anyway. And that is why Oracle is also going right next to Cleric. Druid is actually going slightly above Cleric, if anything, just for the cool factor of Wild Shape being able to give you finesse or agile unarmed attacks that can trigger sneak attack. So as a rogue druid, you can sneak attack regardless of your form, so you can turn into a cat a la World of Warcraft and get those sneak attacks. Very cool. Sorcerer, once again, going into B tier, probably yeah, I'll put it above Cleric just because bloodline focus spells are usually really powerful, and with sorcerers being able to choose their spell list, I'm sure there's something there that can make them stronger than a Cleric. At the end of the day, they can still use the Divine Spell list, just like a Cleric, and they don't even need to prepare specific spells, so they can prepare both Heal and Heroism, and use whichever one they feel like they need. Wizard and Witch, however, are both going in C tier as they are restricted to only the Arcane spell list, probably the least helpful for a martial class, as it doesn't come with a whole lot of self buffs. It gives them a lot of cool options, you can still Fireball and Cloud Kill or whatever, but overall it does not mesh together. A rogue wizard is just about as strong as a rogue and a wizard, whereas a rogue barbarian is much stronger than a rogue and a barbarian. And knocking out the final spellcaster on our list, except for one, the poor summoner. It was in F tier for fighter, I believe. I think it was the only F tier dual class for fighter, because the summoner just doesn't give anything aside from a couple spell slots. When you are already a martial class, having an Eidolon alongside you doesn't help that much. Now, what I'll give the rogue is it gives you someone to flank with and thus trigger your sneak attacks. You're still spending actions to let them move, so it's not much better than an animal companion. In fact, you'd be much better off with just a raptor druid companion. But I'll give it low C tier, because you could still play a summoner with a divine Eidolon to get those buff spells and have something to flank with you. Now, champion, just like fighter, goes straight into S tier. Champion is such a weird enigma. On its own, it is one of my least favorite classes in the entire game, but it is easily the maybe not single, but one of the top 3 most powerful dual class options for almost any class in the game. Spoilers for future tier lists, champion's gonna be S tier, for one reason: legendary and heavy armor. When you have legendary and heavy armor, it doesn't matter what the rest of your kit gives. You can wear the best stuff in the game. Now, granted, as long as you have the strength for it, so that actually might not make it S tier for something like a wizard, but you could make an incredible ruffian rogue champion, full heavy armor, still getting sneak attacks with those like a short spear or the special weapons that the ruffian can use. And even if not, getting your strength up isn't too difficult. That armor proficiency is just incredible, and even if you don't use the heavy armor, the champion's armor proficiency goes up faster than most other classes, especially the rogue. So this lets the rogue sneak attack make up for the champion's lack of damage, and the champion's armor proficiencies make up for the rogue's lack of defense, and voila, you've got a crazy powerful martial class who even gets some magic from their focus spells. Fighters S tier, you're getting critical hits on top of sneak attack. I know you're sick of me saying, +2 isn't that much. It's a lot. It's a lot. If the fighter dual class only gave you +2 to all attacks, that would still be S tier. Think of the fighter dual class as getting a +2 weapon at level 1. That is a level 10 magic item at level 1. The Rogue Gunslinger is just about as good as the fighter. I'm going to put it in A tier, above the Barbarian. Now, the reason it's not S tier is because the Gunslinger only bumps proficiency with firearms and crossbows, whereas the fighter bumps proficiency with everything. But remember that the Rogue sneak attack triggers on all ranged weapons. Those ranged weapons don't need to be agile or finesse. So any firearm, any sniper, any crossbow all get sneak attack. Combine that with the legendary proficiency of the Gunslinger and you've got some wild damage. Honestly, with the Gunslinger's feat support for firearms, it would be a better choice than the fighter if you are specifically going for a firearm-based rogue dual class, but the fact that the fighter gets all weapons and would allow you to fight with legendary proficiency even in melee keeps it a squeak above Gunslinger, but it's still very potent. The Inventor is fine. There's nothing super exciting, there's nothing super game-breaking. You could make the cool invisibility armor, which would make you kind of super sneaky as a rogue. You could make some fancy weaponized daggers or something. I don't think the Inventor can put agile or finesse on a weapon. It's another case of the Rogue is good, and the Inventor is good, so put them together and it's good, but nothing they have helps the other thing out. Maybe some of the ranged weapon innovations could be fun to combine with sneak attack, especially with debilitating strike later on as a rogue, but nothing the Inventor can help the rogue do will ever be better than the Gunslinger or the fighter, and the armor isn't good enough to compare to that like the champion, so Inventor is gonna go bottom of B tier. Investigator, S tier. This might be the only time you hear me say that. Simple. Devise a stratagem plus sneak attack. Not only do you get all the bonus damage, but it's devise a stratagem. So you get to roll a d20 and see if you were gonna miss anyway. Take a few feats as a rogue or an archetype that give you some backup spells that don't use an attack roll, and you will have such a consistent damage dealer. You step into flanking position, you devise a stratagem. Oh, I rolled a 17? Cool, I'm gonna stab you for weapon damage, plus sneak attack, plus strategic strike damage, all doubled on a crit. Tons of fun, super consistent. You will have more skills than anybody in the game. Like, that's its own thing as well, is both of these classes get additional skill feats and skill increases. It's incredible. Just pure numbers-wise, I don't think it's quite as potent as the fighter or the champion, but dang, it's high. Magus is fun. Magus is spell strike sneak attack. It's going to be huge burst. The sneak attack lets the Magus be even burstier than it was before. It's nothing mind-blowing. I think if you put it on a shooting star Magus with ranged attacks, you could ranged spell strike sneak attack, which is really cool and could do some big bursty damage. Honestly, maybe even more damage than the Gunslinger if you have a ranged weapon Magus with a firearm that's dual class rogue for sneak attack. You could do some cool stuff. But it also doesn't have the accuracy of the Gunslinger. I'm going to keep it at A tier because it just augments your attacks and you can do so much burst that you're probably going to one-shot some normal enemies in a standard encounter, which is going to feel great. But it's just even burstier than the Magus normally is. You do your massive sneak attack spell strike, and that's about it. Sure, you could spend the time to recharge your spell strike and what have you, but overall, it's fun. It's not mind-blowing. Monk is very much in the same boat. It gives you a lot of new unarmed strikes to choose from, and a lot of those do still have agile or finesse on them. So you might be able to get away with that D8, maybe even a D10 unarmed strike. I'm not sure. I don't know all the stances by heart. And it's going to give you that legendary unarmed proficiency, which with your high dexterity is going to be great. But similar to the Magus and the Barbarian, it's a lot of cool options that just make it a little bit more effective. You know, you get maybe a higher damage die, maybe some cool passive effects from the stances, but overall, it's not going to turn the system on its head. It's not going to break the game. You're not going to one-shot many enemies, but it is still going to be a ton of fun. Ranger, however, going straight to S tier for one word. Flurry. Flurry Ranger on a rogue is broken, because in Pathfinder 2e, if you're unaware, sneak attack does not have a limit of once per turn. Every time you hit a flat-footed creature, you will sneak attack, and Flurry reduces the penalty for multiple attacks from 5 down to 3, and if you're wielding an agile weapon, which you're a rogue sneak attacking, so you will be, it's only a -2, which means right from level 1, you could feasibly attack 3 times, realistically hit with all 3 attacks, and deal sneak attack on every single strike. This is going to be nasty. I don't know where in S tier it lands though. It's so consistent, it's so many pops of damage, but none of the damage is going to be a flat bonus, if that makes sense. It's very dice reliant, whereas something like the Investigator, or even the Barbarian for that matter, are going to be flat damage bonuses. I mean, I guess the Investigator is also dice-based, but Barbarian is going to be, a flat 6 damage bonus if you're using a rapier, and such like that. The Ranger is just a lot of sneak attacks. It's not giving your sneak attacks more damage, it's just letting you do more of them. I think I'm going to put it above the Investigator. Investigator lets you line up for one big hit, but the Ranger lets you just keep chunking for full rogue damage more accurately, more times per turn, or you can even go for precision as a ranged Ranger, and that would probably be about on par with the Investigator Rogue. Just that extra D8 on top of your sneak attacks, granted only once per turn, but hey, it could be fun to use like a sniper firearm where you're only going to be shooting once per turn anyway, and if you critically hit. And we wrap it up with Swashbuckler, which is the best of all these worlds. Swashbuckler, I think I'm going to put above Fighter. The amount of extra damage from Swashbuckler is so consistent. 2 extra damage on every single attack, not to mention the finishers, which are going to deal extra D6s on top of your sneak attack D6s. Plus, you're gonna want panache, you're gonna get panache back, you're gonna have a dexterity through the roof, you're gonna be tumbling through. Ideally, you're tumbling into flanking every single turn. Even if you're already flanking, you can, in one tumble through action, move around and back through them to your original space to get your panache back, keep them flat-footed from the flanking, sneak attack, finishing, almost every single turn for huge damage. The Swashbuckler also gets extra skills, just like the Investigator, and their overall synergy with the Rogue is great. The Swashbuckler makes up for a little bit of that offensive deficit that the Rogue suffers from, and there's a lot of cool stuff. Something I haven't even mentioned for most of these that totally slipped my mind is that a lot of these give access to martial weapons, like the Fighter and the Ranger. They give access to martial weapons, which the Rogue can't usually use, but a lot of these weapons still have agile or finesse. The Rogue's sneak attack doesn't need to be a simple weapon. Rogues just only get access to simple weapons, but give them access to agile and finesse martial weapons, and they suddenly have a whole new world to explore. And that's why we can clearly see here that the top of this list is the martial classes. Sure, getting access to magic is cool, but it doesn't really make the Rogue features themselves any better. It just lets them do both. So there you have it. That is my Rogue dual class tier list. Let me know, do you agree? Do you disagree? Which things did I place horribly wrong and which ones did I get dead on? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and don't forget to subscribe if you enjoy the content, yada yada yada, YouTube plug. The video is over. So thank you to my patrons. I thank all of you for being patrons and doing patron things and helping me do cool stuff like pay rent and buy food. I don't know where this is going. I'm gonna go. I'm on vacation. I hope you guys have a great weekend. So I'll see you next time. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. This outro is going nowhere. How long can I ramble? How long can I just keep you here? Wait. Oh, the video is almost over. I'll just wait until... No. Maybe it's not over. Okay, I'm going. Goodbye.